Welcome to Studio X's Intro to Blender workshop. In this workshop, I'll be taking you through the basics of Blender and how to create your own 3D character. Before we begin, I'd like to share this slide that we include in all of our Studio X presentations, a reminder that here at Studio X, we are all learners, and no matter if you have experience with Blender or not, this workshop is for you. Before we learn what Blender is, let's talk a bit about the basics of 3D modeling. In any 3D modeling software, there's going to be something called a 3D space. If you think of geometry, you'll have a X and Y axis, which concerns a two-dimensional plane. Here, we add a Z axis for 3 dimensions. Think about it like a city block. You have a north, south, east, west, but also an up or down, or building heights. When creating your models, there's going to be these 3 building blocks called vertices, edges, and faces. A face is a plane, an edge is where 2 faces meet, and a vertex is where multiple faces meet. These together make up what's called a 3D mesh, and this can be as simple as a cube or as complex as a 3D character. Inside of Blender, there's these pre-made or primitive objects. It's genuinely easier to start off your model with one of these objects rather than starting from scratch. Some are more helpful than others. Think about what shapes you use if you were modeling a donut, or how about an ice cream cone? You can manipulate objects in Blender by transforming them in 3 ways: translating, rotating, and scaling. Translating is just you moving the objects, changing its location, and rotating will change the angle, and scaling will change its size. Now let's move on to materials and textures. Objects in Blender start off as smooth, colorless shapes. So in order to make our shapes look real, we'll need to add materials and texture. Materials mimic real-life properties of objects, such as whether it's reflective, smooth, or bumpy, and textures is a 2D image that wraps around a model, kind of like putting clothes on it, and that defines the materials and adds properties like color. Now that we have that out of the way, so what exactly is Blender? Well, Blender is an industry-standard 3D modeling software with an extensive user community. What's great about it is that it's open source, meaning you can find a bunch of user-generated plugins and add-ons for it. Blender is also used across many industries and applications, such as animation, film, gaming, motion graphics, interior design, architecture, and real estate. Here are some of the examples of places you can see Blender being used. One of the most notable examples is Flow, and it's the one in the middle, and it won the Best Animated Feature Award at the Oscars, and it was made entirely in Blender. Now, as you can see here, Blender has a lot of different hotkeys, and it's often easier to navigate through Blender with these shortcuts. I'll be showing you about 10 to help you work more efficiently through Blender today. Now, right here is the Blender user face. In the highlighted pink area is our 3D viewport, where your models will appear. In the highlighted blue area is our hierarchy, a collection of everything that's in the 3D viewport. And down here in the highlighted yellow area is the properties window, where you can change the properties and different settings of your model. Now, let's open up Blender and get started. This is what we're going to be making today, a collection of primitive objects with different color materials. Now let's practice moving around first. We're going to be rotating, zooming in and out, and panning. We'll also learn about how to change our view with the numeric keyboard hotkeys. So as you can see right here, I'm currently inside of Blender, and what we're just going to do to rotate is we're going to hold down the middle mouse button and drag. As you can see, I'm rotating around the cube in the center of our viewport right here. To zoom, you just want to scroll in and out. So I'm going to scroll in, I'm going to scroll out, just like that. And for panning, you just want to hold down the middle mouse button and shift and drag. Now, in our viewport, you can see these lines that are these color lines. And for the red one, it's actually our x-axis, and for the green one, it's our y-axis. And we currently aren't aligned with it just because we've been rotating around the viewport. And to snap onto those axes, you just want to click on 1 on your numpad, 3, and 7. And as you can see, 1 aligns you with the y-axis, 3 aligns you with the x-axis, and Z aligns you with the z-axis. Now we're going to add some shapes. I'm going to go over how you can add multiple primitive objects, and we're probably just going to line them up in a row for now. So right here, I already have a cube in the center, and so let's add some other shapes. In order to add other shapes, we're just going to click on this add button up here, click it, and we're just gonna hover over mesh, and let's add in a cylinder. Now, as you can see, the cylinder is kind of clipping through with the cube, and in order to move it, we're just going to click G, and I can just drag it out, and then click to finish our transformation. All right, I'm gonna add another one. Let's say I wanna add in a cone, all right? And just like before, it's in the origin, which is in our cube, so we're just gonna move it out. I'm gonna press G, and then this time I'm gonna show you guys how you can move it along an axis, and I'm gonna click X before I click anything else, and the X-axis now should be highlighted, and then I'm just gonna drag it out. As you can see, my mouse is moving up or down, or trying to move up or down, but it's still on the X-axis, right? Just like before, to finish the transformation, I'm just gonna hit click, and this way it's aligned, right? And let's just add in one more. Let's add in a UV sphere, okay? And just like before, I'm gonna hit G, and then X, and move it out, like that. Before we move on to the next step, let's save our Blender project. In order to do that, I'm just gonna click here, File, and I'm gonna hit Save As, and just gonna save it somewhere. So for me, I'll probably save it on my desktop, and I'm just going to name this Blender Tutorial. And it should save as a .blend file, and you can just hit Save As, and there you go, okay? Now, let's add the floor and backdrop. We'll be using a plane for this, and we're gonna learn how to duplicate the plane and turning it into a backdrop. So a plane is a primitive object as well. So what we're gonna do is the same as before. We're gonna hit add, and then we're gonna hover over meshes, and then you can see the option for a plane here. And just like before, it spawned in at the origin. So what we're gonna do is we're going to press S to scale it, and we're just gonna make sure it covers all of our objects, right? And right now it's kind of clipping through, so what I'm gonna do is gonna hit G and then Z to move it down, just like that, okay? Now, how do we add a backdrop? We're just gonna probably make like a background along this axis right here where my mouse is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I'm in one of the views, and since I'm working along the Y-axis, which I think is our front, I'm gonna just go to our side by clicking the numpad number 3, and make sure your plane is selected, and you know that if it's orange, and we're gonna hit 3, and then I'm gonna hit Shift D to duplicate, and I'm gonna click the mouse button just to make sure that the plane that we duplicated is actually in this space, okay? Now afterwards, what we're gonna do is again, just make sure you're aligned on the side view, so you wanna make sure that you click on numpad number 3 before you do this, and I'm gonna hit R. You can see that the plane is there, and I'm just gonna rotate it so it aligns with the Z-axis like that. Afterwards, as you can see, it's clipping again. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna hit G and then Y to move it back. And now we have a background. Before we move on, I'm just gonna ask you guys to play around with your shapes. So I'm gonna just move them around, probably scale, rotate them, and like align them in a different way instead of them being just aligned along the X-axis. And feel free to add in more shapes if you want. So I'm just gonna maybe move this here, maybe turn scale my cylinder up a bit. Maybe I want to add a second cube, so I'm just gonna hit Shift D just like before and duplicate another cube. I'm gonna hit G, Z to move it up maybe, scaling it down on the side. Make sure I'm on the Z-axis before I scale. And then go down like that. Maybe I want my spear to be closer to the middle like that. I'm just gonna hit G, click. And then let's say I want to maybe I want to rotate our cylinder in a way where it's like sitting on the cube. I'm just gonna move it around, pan it, just like that, okay? After we do that, let's give our shape some color. We're gonna learn about the shading editor and how materials work inside of Blender. So now that we have this set up, as you can see, we're currently in layout, And what we're going to do is that we're going to go into the shading tab right here. We're going to click, and it's going to bring us into a whole different view, just like that. Okay? Now, in the shading editor, let's add materials to one of our objects. So for me, I'm going to just use the cube as an example, right? And you're going to see nothing here. I don't know why I showed it for me, but there should be nothing in this area of your screen. And what you're going to do is you're going to hit new. And so this node will now pop up called principled BSDF, right? And what we're going to do is you're going to see that there's like a base color here, and you're going to click on the white part, and a color will pop up, and you're just going to click and drag. And as you can see, as I'm clicking and dragging, the color of the cube is also changing. So let's change this to blue, okay? And we're going to do this with all of the shapes, and even the backdrop and the floor. So I mean, a cube right here is also colored, so I'm just going to change it to yellow. I'm going to click on my cylinder, and let's change it to maybe red. Let's click on my spear, and I'm going to change this to pink, and then let's click on our cone, and I'm going to change this into like let's keep the color palette like kind of similar, so I'm going to change it to like an orangey kind of color. Okay, and just like before, I'm going to click on my floor with my plane, and I'm going to change the color of that too, and we can change this to like yellow, and then change our backdrop color. I'm going to hit new again and change the base color to maybe like this aqua color. All right. Again, after you finish adding your materials onto your models, let's save the blend file again, and we can quickly do that by pressing Command S. So we're going to go back into layout, and I'm just going to hit Command S. And again, another way to save our blend files is if you just go into File and Save. Now, let's add some lighting to our scene. We're going to experiment with viewing models and create at least 2 new lightings through duplicating. So before we were in the shading tab, and we're going to move back into layout. And in layout, as you can see, our color kind of just disappeared. So we're going to try and bring that back. There's these 4 different views up here, and we're currently in the solid viewport, and we're just going to click on the one right next to it, and as you can see, our color came back. But we also want to make sure we can see the lighting, and so we're going to click on the one all the way at the end, and now you can see the light that's currently in our space. If you click on it, a light is just like any other objects in Blender, so you can also move it around by pressing G, and as you can see, as I'm moving it, the lighting is affecting the shapes that's in our viewport, right? And just like any other object, we're going to click to make sure the transformation is finished. Now, in your properties panels, right, make sure you have the light selected. You're going to see this little green light bulb called data, and we're going to click on it. After clicking on it, you're going to see this this little panel right here, and there should be like this color, power, and radius symbol, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to just mess around with the lighting. So let's say I wanted the color to be, maybe for the sake of like the theme, I'm going to turn it into like this like pinkish purplish color, okay? Just like that. And let's say maybe I want the power to be a bit higher, or like I want the light to be brighter. I'm just going to click on power, and we're just going to change the number to make it bigger. So let's say I want 2000 instead. And it looks a little brighter, but I think that the light is a little bit too bright. So let's again click on it and maybe turn it down to 1500. And there we go. That's a bit better to me. Okay. And we're going to duplicate, so we're going to add at least one more light in here. And remember, in order to duplicate, you're going to hit Shift D. And now I'm going to just drag my my second light to like maybe the opposite side right here. And so now we have 2 different lights going on. What I'm going to do is that to make it look nicer, I'm going to change the color of my second light. So make sure you have your second light selected. And let's say I want this to be like, I think a cool color would be, yellow? No. Blue, maybe? Let's go red, okay? Red and purple. You can never go wrong with that. And we can also change the power of this light as well. So maybe I want this to just go down to like the original 1000. And so now we have 2 different light sources, and that's affecting our shapes. let's experiment with our shapes now. We're going to try shading some of the shapes smooth, changing the roughness and the metallicness through the principle of shader. So as you can see here, let's change my sphere so it's a bit more smoother. You can see that there's little ridges on it currently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click, and then I'm going to right click to have this panel pop up, right? And then you're going to see this option called Shade Smooth, and you just want to click it. As you can see, the little ridges kind of went away. And we're going to do that too with our cylinder over here. We're going to again make sure the cylinder is selected, right click, and Shade Smooth. Okay? You can also try the different other shaders, and as you can tell, this one kind of just messed up with like the whole rims and edges. So we're going to just maybe choose Shade Auto Smooth instead. And that looks a little better to me, so we're going to keep it that way. Now, let's head back into the shading editor right here, and we're going to mess around with the metallicness and the roughness of every single object that we have. I'm going to try this out with our sphere, and you can see that underneath our base color, there's these little different options we have called metallic, roughness, alpha. We're mainly going to be working with these two. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you click and drag. And as you can see, the more metallic I made it, the more reflective it gets, right? And if you don't want to instead, and you want to make it more accurate, you can also click on the metallicness and you can change the number directly in there. Just make sure that it doesn't go above 1 because they can't do that. Let's also like maybe move the roughness down, and oh, well, would you look at that? It's very reflective now. And just gonna do this for all your shapes and just mess around with it to make it look better. And so let's say I want my cylinder to also be more reflective. Let's say I want my cube to be very rough, and I want the cube on top to be a little bit metallic but also a little bit rough. And then maybe the cone back here, we're just going to change the metallicness by a little bit, maybe make the roughness a lot. Okay, now let's put everything together and render an image. We're going to be using our camera object in the viewport and learn how to lock the camera in view. So let's head back into our layout right here, right? And similar to like every other object, there's an object called camera, all right? And in order to find it, you can probably click in your hierarchy the camera button, and as you can see, my camera's right here. And it's this little weird rectangle looking thing, right? Now, let's say you don't have a camera, so I'm just gonna delete this real quick, right? Where would you find it? You can go into add, and then instead of clicking on meshes, there should be a camera option right here, and you can import a new camera into your viewport like that. Okay, before we do anything with the camera, I'm gonna have you guys click on N so you guys have this tab opened, right? And you're just gonna head down to view and make sure your camera is selected, right? Right here there should be a little option called view lock, and we're just going to lock the camera to view. This is just so whenever we're moving around with the camera in our face, we don't have to move the camera around. It will make it easier for us to move the camera around. So let's say I want to lock into our camera. So I'm going to click 0, and as you can see, I'm currently locked into our camera, and we can zoom and move around just like how we would regularly. So I'm just gonna align the camera to wherever I want my image to look like. So whatever's inside this rectangle is what it will look like. I'll also show you guys what happens if you guys don't have the camera to view locked on. So let's say I get out of my camera, right? And I turn off camera to lock. If I go back into my camera view and I try moving around, it exits the camera view right away, right? So you just wanna make sure the camera to view is locked on. That way it's easier for you to navigate, and so you can see exactly what you're rendering. All right, now that I have my position set up, we're just going to click this little render button up here, right? And I'm going to render in an image. And we're just gonna wait for the blend file to render, and boom, just like that, we have our render result. If you want to save this, you can go on image, and we're just gonna save as, same thing as before, I'm gonna just save this as render, and it should save as a PNG, okay? All right, thank you guys for coming to part 1. Come back to part 2 to learn how to create a character mesh.